Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Coaster News. And as always, we've got some amazing news from different theme parks, rides, attractions and events all over the world. So let's get straight into the news today. Our top story for tonight, Nemesis at Alton Towers is officially closed until 2024. And obviously this day has been, we've been dreading this day for all year basically. Because if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Nemesis at Alton Towers, it's a very iconic roller coaster at Alton Towers. It is a B&M inverted roller coaster that opened in 1994. Was originally designed by John Wardley, who is world renowned for being one of the most famous roller coaster designers in the world. And obviously this was one of his first roller coasters back in like the 90s when his career, and it was because of this coaster that his career really skyrocketed, and designed other coasters such as Oblivion, Air, which is now Galactica, and the Smiler. And Nemesis is such an iconic roller coaster, they've literally kept it this whole time, and because it's so iconic and loved by fans. But it's been operating for 28 years, and obviously, when most roller coasters get to this age, they're reaching the end of the service life. And I say most, apart from old wooden coasters from like the 1920s and 30s, they're still operating to this day. But other than that, most modern roller coasters, when it gets to this age, are getting ready to be demolished basically because they're reaching the end of their service life and will probably be too expensive to maintain. So I would say Alton Towers, because they know this is a fan favourite attraction, rather than completely demolishing it, instead they submitted a planning document to the local council a few months ago, which meant they would completely give the Nemesis a full retrack, placing pretty much all the original track apart from obviously the brake run and the lift hill, and giving it new ride vehicles. But because obviously that's such a lengthy process, they decided to give it it's not going to reopen until 2024. They decided to do it now so it could reopen by 2024. And obviously, because they had to close it because they can't operate this thing while it's being refurbished. They decided to give a ride a final send-off last week for fireworks. And what a turnout it was. There was so many people going to get their final ride on Nemesis, including me. I got my final ride on Saturday last week, and it wouldn't final ride until 2024 when it reopens. In fact, even the original designer of the ride, John Wardley, was there riding it with fans who turned out for the event. It was even like a themed experience on like the final day, where they had people in like hazmat suits and with like the Phalanx logo on it, and doing like inspecting of the whole area. And there's like yellow police tape on the fences, and it was such a fun experience. Apparently, it was a brilliant send off for the ride. And even like had a little announcement after the fireworks on Sunday saying that Nemesis was closing, which we actually all thought that was going to be an announcement saying that like Nemesis Subterra was going to reopen. But obviously it turned out not to be. It just stated what we already knew, but it was like a full-on themed announcement immediately after the fireworks. And it was really cool, but I was hoping they would announce something about Nemesis Subterra. But maybe they'll announce that separately during the off-season, because that's got to be reopening because they've been doing a lot of work around that. Anyway, Nemesis obviously has had millions of people riding it over the past 28 years, and we've got to refurbish it so its service life can be extended by another 30 years or something like that. So when it reopens, it'll be as if it's its first day of operation again. It'll be able to operate for another like 30 years until maybe they'll do another retrack list in 2050, 2052, if it operates for another 30 years. Which would be really interesting to see if it's still operating by then. I hope it is, but I'm not sure. Obviously this ride is a fan favourite, and they're doing this to keep it operating for as long as physically possible. And we are going to miss it during this off-season and the whole of next year. We cannot wait for it to reopen in 2024. But sadly, as part of the retrack, they have got to fill all of the original track with sand, meaning that we will never hear that iconic Nemesis roar again when it's flying around the track at 50 miles an hour. So it's a good thing that we all went to riding it last time. That is the last time we'll ever hear that Nemesis roar. That's going to be sad, but apart from that, I cannot wait for Nemesis to reopen in the next couple of years, and it's going to be amazing. in other news today, construction vehicles have finally arrived at Thorpe Park for Project Exodus. And obviously this is a massive milestone for this ride, meaning that technically they have now started construction on Project Exodus, and that is huge. Obviously, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Project Exodus is a new roller coaster being planned to open at Thorpe Park in 2024. It was announced last year, probably about like almost a year ago. It was announced on 10th of December, officially fully announced, part of a public consultation to build a brand new hyper coaster that was actually planned to be the UK's tallest roller coaster. And obviously that is massive news, considering we haven't gotten a roller coaster that tall since 1994 when the big one opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And obviously as time went on, it did face quite a few planning issues, one of the main ones being the objections from Environmental Agency and Natural England over the flooding risks of the site, because it's being built over a lake on the edge of the island, and it ran a flooding risk. But thankfully Thorpe Park managed to sort it out, and in the end, last month I believe, at some point last month, or in September, I'm not sure, the plans were approved by the local council. However, the Environmental Agency still objected, so the Secretary of State had to sort all the plans out and officially approved it. And that's what I spoke about last week. The Secretary of State has now officially approved the plans, meaning that Project Exodus can now officially go ahead with construction. And that is huge. And within the past few days, construction vehicles have now turned up on site, meaning that they're probably, as I speak, starting clearing of that whole site. Because obviously, when Project Exodus was first announced, prior to that, they had also stated that Old Town will not be open for any of the 2022 season. They actually boarded up the whole site with white construction walls. And you'd think that they probably would start land clearing, but obviously they didn't. They waited until the plans got officially approved, and the plans didn't get fully approved until the season ended. Yeah. So the all of that area, I mean, obviously it's a good thing they kept it, because obviously they wouldn't have been able to bring back Creek Freak Massacre for a final send-off at Fright Nights. But other than that, they got rid of all the rides in that area. Rocky Express has been completely retired. Lumberdrum got relocated to another area of the park where it is now known as High Striker. It's located in Amity next to Storm Surge. Timber Tugboat got relocated to Chessington as part of their new Shipwreck Coast area. It's now known as Trawler Trouble. So basically the only thing remaining in that area was obviously the building for the station building for Loggers League, which was being used as Creek Freak Massacre, the Curly Fry stand, and some additional theming. But that area had kind of become overgrown a little bit over the season. But now, obviously, now that Fright Nights and the main season has ended and plans have been fully approved, they can go ahead with construction. And now that construction vehicles have turned up on site, that pretty much means that they are probably clearing that whole site as I speak right now. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if soon we find out that whole, within the next few months probably, we're going to find out that whole site has been cleared. I mean, bearing in mind, the whole roller coaster isn't going to be on that one bit of land. It's going to go through the back of Old Town, next to the Solar Ride, towards the edge of the islands, and the actual lake that's underneath the ride is actually connecting to the lake that surrounds the whole island of Thorpe Park. In fact, that whole Old Town area with the little flat rides is literally just being used for the station building and the pre-lift hill section, and part of the lift hill. So it's kind of ridiculous, but it's obviously that's how massive it is, because the rest of the ride is going to be all back of that area, and it's huge. It's a massive ride. It doesn't take up a lot of space like lengthwise or widthwise, but it's very tall ride. It's obviously going to be the tallest roller coaster in the UK when it opens, beating the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach by about 13 feet. Yeah, 13 feet. I think, yeah, 13 feet taller than the big one at Blackpool. It's 236 foot tall, and it is also probably rumoured to be the UK's fastest when it opens. Somehow faster than Stealth, which is the current fastest roller coaster in the UK, which is also located at Thorpe Park. And this is massive news. There's actually going according to plan on their timetable that was released with a public consultation, saying we're going to start construction in late 2022. So they've started that now technically, and I cannot wait for this beast to open. Also in the news today, Legoland Deutschland I hope I pronounced that right. Legoland Deutschland are building a brand new roller coaster, which interestingly is a B&M Wing Coaster for 2023. And none of us actually kind of saw this coming. Obviously, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Legoland Deutschland in, I believe it's Germany. Yeah, I think it's in Germany or like the Netherlands. I could be wrong. I think it's like in the Netherlands sort of area. Something like please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but around somewhere in like mainland Europe, Legoland Deutschland are building a brand new themed area. Obviously Lego Mythica, which is a second Lego Mythica area ever built. The first one being obviously Lego Mythica Legoland Windsor last year, here in the UK. So obviously that area is different because because our Lego Mythica has got a little walkthrough attraction which actually opened early this year called the Magical Forest or something like that. Ours has got two little junior drop towers. We've got a rethemed Squid Surfer called Hydra's Challenge, and obviously we've got the Flying Theatre, Fly to the Skyline. But their lineup is different. They've got two little, as far as I know, they've got two like junior drop towers and a B&M Wing Coaster. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a massive wing coaster like the rest of them, because obviously Legoland is a family park. However, it's going to be 55 feet tall, or around that. It's going to be probably the smallest B&M wing coaster ever built, probably tied with the new one at Chessington. However, this one is going to have an inversion, which is very, very bizarre, considering Legoland is supposed to be every Legoland park ever is supposed to be like a theme park for kids. So you'd think that in a theme park for kids, they wouldn't build coasters with inversions. And obviously the trains as well, literally, because it's a wing coaster, instead of sitting on top of the track or below the track, imagine this is the track, and this is the ride vehicle. Instead of sitting underneath or above it, the train is actually the seats are on both sides of the track, so it almost feels like you're flying. So it's really interesting that they're deciding to build a B&M wing coaster and even include an inversion on it. Obviously, apart from that one inversion, the rest of it's more of a family layout, but it's a very interesting design choice for their new roller coaster. It's scheduled to open next year at Legoland Deutschland. When it does open, it's probably going to be like the best coaster in any Legoland park. I cannot wait for this thing to open. I wonder if Merlin are gonna, if this is successful, I wonder if Merlin are going to consider building more coasters like this in future Legoland parks. I mean, they're planning to build a shuttle coaster at Legoland Windsor, which even though it's a family coaster, some people might view it as an extreme coaster because it goes backwards. And it's a very interesting investment by them, and I cannot wait to see what it leads to. And finally in the news today, more track has arrived for the new roller coaster in World of Jumanji at Chessington World of Adventures. And this is brilliant news. Obviously, I was kind of thinking, when's the more track going to arrive? But basically, you know what I'm talking about. This World of Jumanji is a brand new themed land opening at Chessington World of Adventures in 2023. Upon opening, it will consist of 3 attractions, 2 flat rides, which are currently unknown. I think they're 2 children's flat rides, and a brand new roller coaster. And it's a very interesting choice for a roller coaster. It's much like the one at Legoland Deutschland. It's going to be a B&M wing coaster. However, it's going to feature forwards and backwards launches. It will be a shuttle coaster, and it obviously will feature an inversion. Obviously, very interesting choice from Merlin, considering Chessington is supposed to be a family park and they're building an extreme coaster. Basically, the layout is going to consist of a backwards launch. It's going to start with a backwards launch as a wing coaster, going into like a beyond vertical spike, and then it's going to go back through the station into the second launch, which actually goes forwards. It does a 90-degree turn to the left and then goes into a 0G roll, and then it does like an S-bend to the left until it's basically goes into the third launch, and it's going to go into a massive helix surrounding a huge jaguar shrine at the back of the area. It's going to go like a 360-degree helix around that until it reaches the highest point of the ride, which is like a spike going slightly upwards, and it's going to stop at the top, go backwards through the 4th launch and through the rest of the layout, and it looks really exciting. Obviously, this is a very interesting investment from Chessington, and obviously vertical construction actually started a few months ago, I think, at this point, during, I think it was during Halloween, or maybe even some point between Wilderfest and Halloween. But they started placing the support columns throughout the ride, and then a few weeks later, track actually showed up on site, and they started placing the track in the station and on the first turn section going into the 0G roll. Now, obviously, a few weeks went by, or like a few days or something. I think a few weeks went by, and still no new track haven't arrived. However, within the last couple of days, a lot of new track has shown up on site. And this is obviously absolutely incredible, and this is a sign that, because it's not really like a massively long layout, this is probably a sign that maybe, fingers crossed, the track is going to be fully complete by the end of the year. I mean, it's only early November, it's not a long layout, and if it's being installed by RCS, it's going to shoot up really quickly, and it's a very exciting milestone, and I cannot wait for this new ride to open. So that is it for this week's episode of Coaster News. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, then please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your like, see you in the next video. Bye!